Alright, so I know that I already made one of these videos before about how to get around Laguna, but that was with when I was driving actually in live time, and that's when I only had like a 42.3 or some lap like that. It was only when I just started driving the track. But I set a 40.9, which is my personal best in one of my races earlier today, so I'm gonna go use this lap to the replay as a guide, and hopefully we'll get some better information out of this and you guys can be a little bit quicker. Here we go. Now it's important to get a good run off this last turn for your lap that you're going to do, but in this race I got really sideways, so I didn't have a good run up into turn 1 and turn 2, but normally I want to try to get as clean a run through here as possible. And right here, if you really want to, you can go into the pit exit, and it'll save you about maybe a tenth. And I do that in qualifying. I'm not supposed to, but I do because iRacing lets me. In the races, I don't. But if you wanted to, you could save yourself about a tenth by doing that. Just make sure that when there's nobody coming out of the pits when you do it. I try to brake at the 3. Sometimes I brake a little bit earlier. Like right here, you see I braked maybe 10 feet early, but for turn 1 you want to get really slowed down. You don't want to carry too much speed because there's not a long run into turn 4, and I guess it's turn 5, but there's not a long run there, so it doesn't matter if you get a good exit. You want to keep it as tight on the inside as possible. So you go to the inside here, get the car slowed down as much as you can, and get back on the gas as early as you can. Right there I had to lift a little bit, but it didn't cost me too much time. And here you go up into 4th just briefly. I would say you could keep it in 3rd, but it's going to cost you maybe a tenth or 2 because it hits the rev limiter if you don't shift. And then you're just going to downshift again right back into 3rd for this turn. Just a slight tap on the brake and heel toe at the same time. It could be pretty tricky to do that, but once you do a few laps you'll get used to it. And try to turn in pretty late here because it's a late apex. Well, not really late apex, but the corner is a lot farther away than you might think that it is. You can also carry more speed through there than you think. You can carry about 69, 70 miles an hour through there. And through this turn, you can hit about 83. If you go below 83, you're going a little bit too slow. And it's good to get back into the power early back there too. Here, I like to go into 5th. You could keep it in 4th, it's not going to cost you really any time, but you will hit the rev limiter once or twice. And I like to brake right between the 2 and the 3. You can see that little line right here? That's where I brake. And I go 5, 4, 3. And you can also keep it in 4th, so you don't have to go into 5th or 3rd if you don't want, and keep it through 4th all the way around the turn. But it is faster to go to 3rd. It's just weird because you're so high in the rev range when you're in 3rd. And it's important to not take too early of an apex here. The corner can be a little bit deceiving. So if you use that red bump right there on the inside of the curb as an apex, then that's about where you want to be. And as you can see, the revs are really high when you shift down to 3rd. So like I said, you don't have to go into 4th, but it is an uphill run. So I like to go down to 3rd. It's just hard to get used to. And for this sweeping left-hander, I like to lift and turn in both at the same time right at the 2 board, and then get back on the power before I hit the apex so I get a good run up into the corkscrew up in the long hill, up that long hill. But it is easy to go wide there, so you might want to work your way up to going quick through there. And the corkscrew it's pretty hard, but I wouldn't say that. I mean, it is the hardest turn on the track, but there are some turns that are right up there with it. I know last video I said it was by far the hardest turn on the track, but since I've done a lot more laps now, I sort of backtrack myself a little bit there. But it is hard, don't get me wrong. But I still like to brake right at the 3 and stay wide initially, go up onto the curb there. But I go inside more than I used to when I did the other video. So I turn in right here. I got a little bit sideways, but I like to aim, put like one wheel on the sand there, but you have to be careful not to go too far because you will get an off track if you go too far over there. So right there, I didn't really put any wheels on on the sand, but I usually try to. And that was pretty much perfect, actually. And then let's go back into the cockpit. It's hard to find out where your second apex is because obviously you can't see it. So you have to use, or what I do anyways, I use the trees. I'll pause it right here. These trees, I use those to find out if I'm on track or not. And I pretty much line up the middle of my dashboard and the steering wheel with that tree, and then once that's lined up, I know that I can turn in and go right down the hill again. So I'll put this in slow motion. You can see I'm still turning left, turning left, and as soon as that, I go straight a little bit, and as soon as that tree is lined up at the center of my dash, then I turn back right, and then I'll be right onto the apex of this turn. And this turn 8A, or the second part of the corkscrew. I'll go out here, and you can see that's pretty much a perfect apex for both turns. This turn is pretty tricky. There's a couple of different ways you can do it, and I'm not the fastest person through these turns. Maybe you shouldn't be taking advice from me. But what I like to do is I like to get one wheel out in the curb, or at least close to it, for a second. Not a second, obviously, but just a tiny bit of time, and then turn in. And I don't like to use the brakes around here because it could throw the car sideways and catch you off guard, and you could definitely lose a few tenths by doing that. So I just like to let it coast a little bit and then get back on the gas as early as possible. In here, it's hard to say if you should brake early or late, but for me, I prefer braking a little bit early and not as hard, a little bit before the two board, right where the right here, where this pavement turns into sand. That's where I like to brake. As you can see right here, it's just started to brake right there, and then I like to turn in just after the two board. So I turn in right there between the 1 and the 2. And then you could carry about 79, 80 miles an hour through this turn, and that's how you know that you're gonna be on track for a decent time through that turn anyway. Try and get as close to that red curb as possible, or a little bump outside of the curb, but don't hit it because you'll go up on 2 wheels for a little bit, and then that'll slow you down, obviously, if you don't have 4 wheels on the ground. And don't go too far over and try to avoid that curb because you'll get an off track and then the lap won't count. And this final turn is important to get right, like I said in the beginning of the video. You can brake at, before, or just after the 2 board. It depends on how hard you brake, but it's just as fast to do anyway. It's just driver style, really. I brake just after it, so right there is where I brake. And then I like to stay out wide. I'll put this in slow motion. I stay out wide for a little bit, and I try to carry as much speed as possible through the turn. So I'm still on the brakes, and I let it coast for a tiny bit, and then back on the gas right away. This way you have a good mid-corner speed, and you won't lose too much time. Just be careful not to go into this AstroTurf out here, because you get an off track for that as well. And that is a lap around Laguna Seca. Hopefully it helps you guys become quicker. I know it's late in the week, so you're probably not going to get any use out of this now, but maybe for Season 1B, you'll get some good use out of it. Thanks for watching, guys.